You finally have a moment to yourself. No obligations, no one needing anything, nowhere you have to be. And instead of feeling relief, instead of sinking into that stillness and actually resting, something uncomfortable creeps in. A low hum of anxiety, a voice that says you should be doing something, that this is wasteful, that other people are working right now, that you haven't earned this yet. So you reach for your phone, or you make a list, or you find something to clean, something to fix, something to do, anything to quiet that feeling that sitting still is somehow wrong. And by the end of the day, you're exhausted again. Not from working, from the effort of never allowing yourself to stop. If that sounds familiar, stay with me. Because today, we're getting into the psychology of people who feel guilty for resting, the ones the world calls driven, productive, hardworking, and science calls something else entirely. Here's what nobody tells you first. The guilt you feel when you rest is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you're neurotic or overthinking or somehow broken. It is a deeply learned response, wired into your nervous system through years of very specific messages about what you have to do to be worthy of taking up space. And once you understand where it comes from, you will never look at that guilt the same way again. Let's start with what's actually happening when you try to rest and can't. Your body has two primary states. One is activation, the state of doing, producing, responding, staying on top of things. The other is rest, genuine, restorative stillness where the nervous system gets to recover. These two states are meant to balance each other, like breathing in and breathing out. Neither one is optional. Both are necessary for a functioning human being. But for some people, the rest state never feels fully safe. The moment they stop, the nervous system doesn't exhale. It braces, it scans, it sends a signal that something is wrong, that stillness is dangerous, that stopping means falling behind, that if you're not doing something, you are somehow losing something. Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, a physician and researcher who has spent years studying rest and its impact on the human body, makes a distinction that most people have never considered. She found that rest is not simply the absence of work. It is an active, necessary biological process, and when it's chronically interrupted by guilt, the body never fully completes its recovery cycle. The result isn't just tiredness. It's a particular kind of depletion that accumulates quietly over time, affecting mood, cognition, immune function, and the ability to feel genuine joy. In other words, the guilt isn't just uncomfortable, it is physically costly. Your body needs rest the same way it needs food and water, and guilt is the thing standing at the door telling you that you haven't paid enough yet to come inside. So where does that guilt come from? Because it didn't arrive on its own. Nobody is born feeling guilty for resting. Watch a child. They play until they're tired and then they sleep without apology. They don't lie awake wondering if they should have built more block towers. Rest, for a child, is completely natural, until something teaches them otherwise. For many people, that teaching happens early and quietly. Maybe you grew up in a home where productivity was the currency of worth, where busy meant good and still meant lazy, where a parent modeled relentless doing, never sitting, never stopping, treating rest as something that had to be earned after everything else was finished. And everything else was never finished. Maybe you were praised specifically for your output, for your grades, your helpfulness, your accomplishments, your usefulness to others. And somewhere in that pattern, a belief formed, not consciously, not all at once, but solidly, that your value as a person is tied to what you produce, that you are worth loving when you are useful, and that the moment you stop being useful, even briefly, that worth becomes uncertain. Dr. Brené Brown, whose research on shame and vulnerability has reached millions of people around the world, has written extensively about what she calls the worthiness trap, the deeply ingrained belief that we must earn our place through achievement and productivity. And what her research consistently shows is that this belief doesn't make people more productive in any meaningful sense. It makes them more anxious, more prone to burnout, and less capable of the kind of deep, creative, connected living that actually makes a life feel worth living. The people who feel the most guilty for resting are almost never lazy. They are almost always the people who have spent years trying to prove, to themselves, to others, to some invisible standard they can never quite meet, that they deserve to be here. And rest threatens that proof. Because rest produces nothing. And if you are what you produce, rest feels like disappearing. There's another layer to this that goes even deeper, and this one is important. For people who grew up in unpredictable or high-stress environments, homes where things could shift without warning, where emotional safety wasn't guaranteed, where being on top of everything felt like the only way to prevent something bad from happening, rest became genuinely dangerous. Not metaphorically, neurologically. Dr. Peter Levine, a psychologist and trauma expert whose work on the body's stress response has been foundational in the field, explains that when a nervous system is conditioned under chronic stress, it learns to stay activated as a protective measure. Stillness, in that context, is not safety. It is vulnerability. It is the moment when your guard is down and something could go wrong. And so the body resists it, not because you are weak, but because your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It is keeping you ready. It just never received the signal that the danger had passed. This is why so many people describe feeling anxious specifically when things are going well. When there's nothing wrong, when life is quiet, when they finally have a moment to breathe, that's when the dread arrives. Because calm was never safe. Calm was just the moment before. And so they fill it. They stay busy. They stay useful. They stay one step ahead of the stillness because the stillness has always felt like something to outrun. Dr. Gabor Mate, who has spent decades studying the relationship between chronic stress, the body, and emotional patterns, puts it simply: when we cannot rest, we are not choosing busyness. We are avoiding an internal experience that feels threatening. The doing is not the goal. The doing is the escape. And here is the painful irony at the center of all of this. The people who most need rest are the ones least able to allow it. The people carrying the most, the over-responsible, the high-achieving, the always available, the quietly exhausted, are the ones whose guilt is loudest the moment they stop. So they keep going. They push through. They wear the busyness like armor and call it discipline. And the rest debt accumulates silently beneath the surface until the body finds its own way to collect, through illness, through burnout, through a sudden and total collapse of energy that no amount of willpower can fix. Rest is not a reward for finishing everything. Everything never finishes. Rest is a requirement, a biological non-negotiable. And the guilt you feel when you take it is not wisdom, it is a wound. Here's what becomes possible when you understand that. When you recognize that the guilt is not telling you the truth, that it is a learned response, a nervous system habit, a story written in childhood about what you have to do to deserve your place, you get to start writing a different story. Slowly, imperfectly, but deliberately. It starts with something small, sitting with the discomfort of stillness without immediately filling it, letting the guilt arrive and not obeying it. Noticing that when you rest, really rest, without the self-punishment attached, you come back to your life more present, more patient, more capable of giving the things that actually matter to the people who actually matter. It means separating your worth from your output, understanding that you are not the sum of what you produce, that your value as a human being exists independently of your usefulness to others, that you were worthy of rest on the day you were born, before you had done a single thing to earn it. And it means extending to yourself the same permission you would give without hesitation to someone you love. If the person you love most in the world told you they were exhausted and needed to rest, you would not tell them to push through. You would not hand them a list of things they hadn't finished yet. You would tell them to stop, to breathe, to let themselves be still. You deserve that same voice. Not someday, not once everything is done. Now. The guilt will probably still show up. For a while, maybe a long while, it will arrive right on schedule the moment you sit down. But you don't have to obey it. You can let it be there and rest anyway. And over time, slowly, the nervous system learns what it never got to learn before, that stillness is safe. That stopping doesn't mean losing, that you are allowed to put it down. Not because you've earned it, because you're human. And humans need rest. All of them, including you, especially you. If this gave you permission you didn't know you were waiting for, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.